Greetings, lovers of lore and legend. Whether you are student, teacher, parent, storyteller, or tone-deaf cowherd hoping for your big visionary break.
What podcast am I on? What continent is this? What time zone am I in? Hold on, I've got a script in front of me. The Great Tales is a podcast about myths and legends from both inside and outside the Christian tradition. Twice a month, we bring you the story that Christians have read, retold, and wrestled with for centuries.
And this is our first anniversary episode. Do you believe it? We made it to a whole year of this.
I honestly actually don't believe that. It is I've lost my ability to reckon of time in units smaller than centuries, and I have no idea when it is. Although, happy feast, everybody! Today is, of course, the feast of the entrance of the Theotokos into the temple. Little asterisk there. If your November the 20th falls to, or 21st falls today, is the feast of the entrance of the Theotokos into the temple. If you celebrate November the 21st on some other day, save this recording and watch it.
Well, I mean, today, welcome to our old calendar listeners and viewers. Yeah. Happy Feast of the Archangels, everybody. So,
right. Yeah, that's right.
It's a big deal either way.
Yeah.
Yes. So here on this is our 24th episode. It's our first anniversary. On this episode, we're going to bring you two tales that we have brought back fresh from our pilgrimage to Scotland and Northumbria. One from Scotland, one from Northumbria. Are you recovered yet from the pilgrimage?
So I came home, and then I immediately got on a plane 3 days later, and then was gone for a couple of days, and then finally came home. So again, like when I say I don't know what time zone I'm in, I don't know what continent I'm on, like all those things are 100% true. So we've got two stories, and one is a very heartwarming, kind of a cozy story to kind of make you feel cozy as winter begins, and the other one is really awesome and, as I would say, metal. It is creepy and disturbing, which, as we've all learned, is the kind of story that I enjoy.
Yeah. So this time we're actually going to give you a couple of saints' lives, which we haven't done before on this podcast. We haven't done saints' lives, so. Gentle listeners, gentle viewers, you might not think of saints' lives as falling within the category of the myths and legends of old. But the truth is that the people who wrote those stories saw them as essentially in the same category, or very adjacent as the kind of stories we've been discussing for the past year, although obviously kind of higher, greater, more true, more important, and so forth. And so I thought before we dive into these two stories that we could talk for a moment about why saints' lives, why hagiography is this kind of thing. Like, why is it written the way that it is?
Yeah, so I will begin with a brief rant contra C.S. Lewis, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Oh, poor C.S. Lewis.
Poor C.S. Lewis, getting it in the YouTubes today. So it's okay. Like I have a son named Edmund Percival Lewis Rowland, so like I feel like my love for C.S. Lewis is well documented and well established. So the criticism does come from a place of love, which, by the way, is what C.S. Lewis says is the requirement for being able to do good criticism is that you have to at least love the genre that you're criticizing. So Lewis says he didn't like detective fiction, one of the many things he's wrong about. He didn't like detective fiction, and therefore was not qualified to judge whether or not a particular example of detective fiction was a good story or a bad story. Similarly, I think it's like a Christian metal band, Skillet. Do you know about Skillet, Father Andrew?
I have, in fact, spoken on FaceTime with a member of Skillet while I was standing next to Lacey Sturm,
told me about this,
who is a member of Flyleaf, another Christian metal band. So, yes, I mean, I've never met Skillet or watched them in a concert or whatever, but I've spoken with I think it was their bassist, as I recall.
So I'm given to understand that Skillet recently released a cover of O Come, O Come, Emmanuel, and it had a lot of people on the internet very upset. So and it's because it's a metal cover of O Come, Emmanuel. I personally did not find it tasteful, but also, I recognize that because I don't like really any metal music except for that one song by Sabaton about the winged hussars, that I'm also not qualified to make a judgment about whether or not it is a good metal song or a bad metal song. And
it's interesting to me, though. We started out this episode with you using the word metal to describe one of the stories, and that can only be a reference to heavy metal music.
That's right. I am just a huge hypocrite. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I just like, yes, if you're like, aha, we figured him out. Yes, totally right. Totally hypocrite about this. I mean, the thing is that I like, this all relates, I promise. I appreciate certain things about the culture around metal because I have a lot of friends who are metalheads, and they're all universally, every single one of them is a kind, wonderful person. And their being a metalhead was a part of the way that they rejected the spirit of the age. And because I'm a little odd and they're a little odd, that's why we get along. So I know there's something good over there. I know there's something going on there because there's a lot of really beautiful people who enjoy that sort of thing. But sometimes they'll play songs for me, and they'll play one song that's amazing and another song that's apparently terrible. And to my ears, they sound identical. So I just have no way of actually appreciating what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I
was gonna say in my stagehand career that I had before I went to seminary, there was a lot of metal heads, metal music, metal, all kinds of things. I worked a number of metal shows. So I've been near the culture for sure. And, I have appreciation
all the
for
metal
some metal.
all the metalheads are coming out in the chat now, which is exciting.
I know. Somehow we've summoned them.
Somebody's like, "Oh no, that's alternative rock, or it's new metal, not metal." Listen, guys, you're right. You're right.
New metal with an NU.
Just like whatever. If you want to tell me anything, like I just have to believe you. There's no way for me to verify anything that you're saying or know whether or not it's true. But you're probably right. Anyway, okay, moving on. So you have to be able to, you have to love something to critique it. And I love Lewis, and I love Lewis's book, The Discarded Image. Now, I've been revisiting The Discarded Image recently because I'm teaching a course through Dante's Paradiso, which has been super fun. We have 2 more weeks to go. And in this course, one of the things we've been referring to a lot is Lewis's wonderful chapter on the heavens. That is, how did medieval Christians make use of astrological themes and imagery without, being pagans? And what does the church have to say about all that? So anyway, we've been kind of talking through all those things. And of course, Lewis is focused mainly on the medieval West. But listen, man, the medieval East and West are way closer to each other than the modern West and the modern East are, if that makes any kind of sense. Like, in other words, the differences between East and West are important, but they're much smaller than the difference between ancient and modern. So anyway, everybody in the medieval period would have agreed, even if they disagree about the team you should be on, they agree about the rules of the game that's being played. Let's put it that way. Okay, so the Discarded Image purports to be an overview. It was actually a series of lectures. It's the last thing that Lewis ever published. It was originally a series of lectures that he delivered on the medieval model, and then it was turned into a book. And so it's supposed to basically be a literary overview of Western medieval literature and all the important things that you would need to read if you were going to become what Lewis calls a naturalized citizen of the Middle Ages, which I would basically, if I had to put a box around myself, that's the one I would like to be in. So here's the problem with the Discarded Image, and I'm seriously thinking about seeing if I can somehow do a publication of the Discarded Image in which I cheekily add a chapter to the end. I've thought about some different ways I could do this, and because in some countries this is in the open domain, but in any case. This is
You're gonna be publishing something in Vanuatu sometime soon or something.
Well, a lot of Lewis's stuff is in a public domain in Canada, believe it or not. But in any case, the Lewis covers lots of different kinds of literature, but the one form of literature which Lewis completely ignores, probably fair to say it avoids, but certainly it just was not in the scope of things that he was personally interested in, is what turns out to be the largest and most important genre of literature in the Middle Ages, which is, of course, hagiography.
Right.
So, in the Middle Ages, if you're, let's say, a well-to-do owner of like a homestead in medieval Iceland, you know, you're sitting there or sitting around reading stories together in the evening. Well, what stories are you reading? Well, you're reading the local family sagas, but you're not reading Beowulf. You're not reading the Aeneid. You're not reading Homer. What are you reading? You're reading what in Icelandic they called the sagas of holy men. That is, saints' lives.
Yeah.
And this is true no matter where you live in the Middle Ages, east or west, north or south, rich or poor. The main genre of literature and storytelling which everybody is consuming and which is therefore shaping the way that they tell their own stories is hagiography. And it's not even close. There's more hagiography written in the Middle Ages than every other genre of literature put together. And I'm very sorry to say that other than the famous examples, most of it just has not been translated because it's not the sort of thing that, for instance, we have a ton of Norse sagas. Anybody out there just like wants to do a master's project and translate a Norse saga? There is so much hagiography. I think there's like 6 extant different versions of the life of St. Nicholas, who's of course like he's the big saint. The Icelanders are interested in together with Thomas à Becket, and who was huge among the Scandinavians. Really big saint. Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, in fact, there's a famous there's a famous saga which ends with the main character, or at some point in the saga, the main character is going to get his head cut off, right? But he's reading the life of Thomas like at a key moment to his family at a key moment in the saga, and this is like foreshadowing the execution that's coming on later. So anyway, people read a lot of hagiography in the Middle Ages, and when you say that they saw it as being a piece with the other stuff, it's in the sense that when they talked about something like the Aeneid or the what they would have called the matter of Rome back then, which would have just been all the Greece and Roman mythology. So we've just done a ton of stuff on Thebes. In the Middle Ages, they believed that Thebes was a real city, which of course it was, and that the war against Thebes had really happened, which of course it did, and that all the characters in those stories were real people, and that there is a continuity, a sort of you could say like a golden thread of storytelling and history that connects into our own time. And yes, there was supernatural stuff going on back then, and yes, those gods were demons, but now we know the one true God, and it's not like all the magic went out of the world just because now the saints are running the place. And so hagiography is a continuation of history in a very particular way, because it shows the way that history can be caught up into the life of God through a human person.
Yeah, and I think that like we did an episode about this on Lord of Spirits where we talked about what is history. And like one of the things that we mentioned was that history is not, in the pre-modern world, history is not the way that we think of it now, where we're attempting to create kind of a record of what exactly happened, right? But the problem with that, of course, is there are billions and billions of things happening in the room that I'm in, and almost none of them will be ever written down. Even if even the conversation you and I are having gets written down, it won't. It probably will not, right? There's so much
to assume that there's not already an AI agent out there transcribing this into a Father Richard, Father Andrew, and Deacon Seraphim large language model, which eventually, once we die, they will just use to continue the production of podcasts into the far distant future.
Alas. But so the point is that writing history means making selections no matter what.
That's right.
It's not simply an accurate accounting of everything that happened. It's only a handful of things that happened that we're regarding as important. And the fact that it's about what we regard as important, and it becomes that's the story, and then particular history is kind of the story of a people, and defines who they are, where they're from, and where they're going. That's in many ways is describing everything we've been talking about in this show for the last year, and absolutely is what saints' lives are about. And I was actually thinking about this a little bit today, because this is the feast of the entrance of the Mother of God into the temple. And one of the big questions that people who have even heard of it, Orthodox Christians have heard of it, but people who've even heard of it, one of the big questions they often have is how can that story possibly be real? How could that possibly have happened? Right.
By the way, kids, it is a real story that actually happened, and there's lots of good reason to think that the person who wrote the Proto-Evangelium of James knew a lot about the situation of women in the Second Temple complex. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. Well, and I mean, like if you have a need, which I mean, I have had this need, I still have this need sometimes. I'm sure you've had this need to ask that question in that way. There is actually a paper out there by a writer named Megan Nutzman that goes into great detail, looking at it in a very, very kind of scholarly way, if that's the way that you want to read something, which is fine. But that's not the way that these stories work. That's not their purpose. And that's not to say that it's not true in the way that we describe true and think of it's true in these days. That's right.
In these latter times. It's not to say that at all.
On Sunday, I'll be covering it, so you just come to catechesis on Sunday.
Okay, I will. Actually, I can't do that. I have a thing in Pittsburgh.
I don't think you need my class, Father. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't think you're the.
I'd like your class, but I feel like I'm just too old, too late. But... It's too late for me. But in so many ways. But the reason that the story is told is not to say, let's give you some facts about,
right.
The life of women around the temple in first century Palestine, Judea. That's not the point of it at all. The point of it at all is actually to tell us about tabernacle, to tell us about holiness, to tell us about the Mother of God, to tell us about what it means to live a life that is centered on worship, all of these kinds of things. Like that's the purpose of the story. And that's why, on a certain level, what we might think of as historical facticity or whatever doesn't matter. I like that on a certain level.
A new word there. That's fun.
Facticity. I didn't make up that word, actually.
Really?
There's a phrase, the brute facticity, that's out there, so people can find that on the interwebs, I'm sure. But that's not the point. Interesting though it may be, and maybe helpful, it might be as a kind of crutch, if someone needs that.
Oh, that's a Sartre. That's a Jean-Paul Sartre. Okay, all right.
Facticité, yes. Right.
Flexing a little continental philosophy on us. I see how it's going to be. Okay, I didn't know we were.
Hey, I read Sartre in French in high school, and wow, was it depressing.
All right. How's
today,
folks?
I mean, the key phrase in the play Huis Clos, aka No Exit, is l'enfer c'est les autres. Hell is other people.
Yes.
So, well, that's a very depressing turn to the podcast.
We're getting just nowhere. Okay, I'm sorry. Please.
But I think that there's a sense in which this whole podcast is about preparing people to read saints' lives.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's absolutely.
Now, it's not the only thing we're doing here. Not the only thing, but I think that often when people read saints' lives here in the 21st century West, the first question they ask is, did that really happen? Like St. George, the dragon, what dragon, did that really, it's like, look, so number one, the answer to those questions usually is yes.
Yes.
The question is, in what way did it happen? But even then, the point is that these stories become our stories as a people, our story of who it is that we are. And so when that becomes part of who you are, when it's part of your mental and your spiritual furniture, when you are challenged in some way in your life, as we all are every day, then the response you make to it, I mean, and this has been shown, if studies show, to lurch back in that direction, that the stories that you have in your mind, the patterns that you have in your mind, whether it's because you read it or had it read to you, or because you watched someone else behaving in a certain way, those shape significantly what it is you do in particular situations. Like, there's a sense in which, on some level, we're all kind of acting out scripts that we already know, right? And so this is part of why when St. Paul says, whatever things are good, honest, true, beautiful, of good report, think on these things, because that's the way that you end up living, right? And so, I mean, this is why St. Basil in that text that we read in the very first episode says, focus on this, push this to the side. He's trying to train us in that way. And so I think that when we understand that saints' lives are legendary mythic material, we shouldn't understand that to mean that they're not true. We should understand it to mean that the kind of storytelling that they are is designed to get down deep under your skin, into your soul, and define you as a person, but also us as families and as a people, that we constantly referring back to these stories, and our very names as Christians refer to stories. I'm actually about to start. I think we should do this on a future episode, actually. I'm going to look back into the Old English poem Andreas, of course, because I have a personal interest in this poem since it's about my patron saint.
That's right.
Because 2 Sundays from now is the Feast of the Apostle Andrew, and I'm going to be preaching on that day. And, that story is wild, wild, wild in the way that it's told in that poem. I mean, there's cannibals. I don't want to give too many spoilers. We should definitely do that poem, on a future episode.
And we talk about its connections to Beowulf.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be fun for a lot of people, actually. So yeah, hey everybody in the chat, sound off. Do you want us to do an episode about this particular poem, about the Apostle Andrew and the island of cannibals? Probably most people outside of kind of Anglo-Saxonist circles have never even heard of.
Actually, what would make a really good episode, Father, is that we could do all of the other things that are in the Beowulf manuscript that aren't Beowulf.
Oh, that would be fun. Absolutely.
Because the Beowulf manuscript has Andreas, but it also has the Beowulf retelling of Judith, in which Holofernes is a giant or a troll.
Yeah.
So,
that would be fun. But the point being that, our names refer to stories, right? So if you don't know the story of your patron saint, you need to learn it, because that's your story. That's your story. And so we're going to do a couple of saints' lives today. We're going to do Saint Caedmon. We're going to do Saint Oran, and very, very different, very, very different stories. But both stories, I think we should say, for those of you who are not yet subscribed to the Orthodox Pilgrim podcast, Orthodox Pilgrim channel on YouTube, just click right now. Go to the Orthodox Pilgrim and subscribe.
Hey, so we should probably explain to people. I assume that everybody who follows the things that I do watches everything that I produce and every
all of
place
it
that I produce it,
all
and therefore you are in. However, I found out in real life this is not the case.
It's very disappointing when we learn that.
Just to be very clear, as we were referring to earlier on, Father Andrew and we missed several episodes because we were on pilgrimage to Scotland and Northumbria. But it wasn't just like us going for our own benefit, although obviously the goal number one is the salvation of your own soul. But we are also going for your benefit. And so what we did, thanks very much to the kind donations of you guys and people like you, we went on a trip that basically followed the historical path of Christianity in Scotland and Northumbria, starting at Whithorn, going up to Iona, and then following the path of the Ionian mission down to Lindisfarne, Banbury, Whitby, Durham, all that stuff. And as we did that, we filmed a ton of stuff on location. I want to say it's about 10 hours of video or so that we filmed on location when it's all said and done. Just looking at the stuff on my camera and some of the stuff from your camera that I was uploading, I think it's right around there. That might be a little high, but in any case, we recorded just a ton of content. And so all of that is going to be doled out, basically, as the editors work on it, on the YouTube channel called The Orthodox Pilgrim. So if you're currently subscribed to this channel and you say, I really actually need a little more Father Andrew and Deacon Seraphim in my life, what you can do is go subscribe to The Orthodox Pilgrim, which does not just have my lovely voice piping into your ear holes, but also Father Andrew, Pastor Mike Landsman from the Areopagus, and of course our good friend Father Jacob Siemens, who was our tour guide, was really our pilgrimage guide and kind of local expert on the ground while we were there. So if you want to support that kind of work, and also just, I mean, I know that for a lot of Americans, you know, it's something like 2/3 of people living in the United States today are of Scotch-Irish ancestry, like some significant portion of it. So it's most of you, probably.
Yeah.
And so there is something for us. I mean, like, obviously, we love saints from all over. I love my patron saint, Saint Seraphim of Sarov. Like, we love saints from all over. But there is something kind of special when we start talking about these old Orthodox saints. And they are Orthodox saints. If you have questions about that, you can go subscribe to the Orthodox Pilgrim, where we will discuss that. But
That's right.
When we start talking about these old Orthodox saints in these parts of Northern Europe and Western Europe where our ancestors are from, who actually lived lives much more similar to the faith that we still practice within the Orthodox Church today than anything else in the West, there's a certain kind of person. I'm that kind of person. My wife, also that kind of person, who gets very excited talking about these saints. And so if you're that kind of person and you would like that kind of content, go subscribe to the Orthodox Pilgrim, where hopefully we'll have more pilgrimages to come as well. So,
oh, absolutely. We're even now, we are already working on the planning for the next great pilgrimage, which, I mean, I can go ahead and say it because you know, it's going to happen. We're going to be heading up to the frozen north.
Yes,
that's right. Vikings. We're going to be
Viking times.
We're going to go Vike.
Although I do
as
have,
one does.
I do have a really good a Breton and France connection that I just made that I have to tell you about later. But anyway, back to regularly scheduled.
Long live the pilgrimage. So yes, everybody check that out. There's a lot of great content on there already, and we are just getting started there. We're just getting started. So ridiculously fun. And hey, you know, since we're talking about it, I mean, this isn't in the script, but since we're talking about it, if you like that kind of thing, please, you can give specifically to that. Like you can go to ancientfaith.com/support and you can give something in the memo, you can say for pilgrimage documentaries. And then you will support this kind of work.
And that basically forces the people in Ancient Faith to send us on pilgrimage documentaries, because legally they are not allowed to do anything else with that money.
That is correct. Restricted funds. So if you say this is for this, then it'll go for that. It won't go into the operating fund. It'll just go straight for that. So just putting that out there, you know, to make it possible. It's people like you that make it possible. Okay, so 2 saints' lives. We're going to do Saint Caedmon of Whitby first. So I want to kind of I'll sort of tell some of this story, and you're going to really focus on Saint Oran, but of course we know both of these pretty well. So one of the places that we went on our pilgrimage is a place called Whitby. So Whitby, as I learned when I was there, actually I did not know this. Whitby is where most of the action of the novel Dracula takes place.
Okay,
and in fact, when we got there, and we had just arrived,
which was Halloween weekend.
Yeah, we had. That is true. We had just arrived, and we found a pub to have lunch at. So we sat down. We're having some amazing seafood in Whitby, because that's what I had the Whitby scampi, which is like the thing apparently.
It's kind of famous.
We sit down there, and of course 3 of us are Orthodox clergy. We're wearing black cassocks.
2 of you are wearing crosses.
And 2 of us are priests wearing crosses, and the waiter comes up to us. Actually, I think it was the owner. The owner came up to us and said, "Oh, are you
here for Goth Weekend?
Are you here for Goth Weekend?"
Now, I thought this was very funny. Father Andrew can laugh at it looking back on it now, but in the moment,
it kind of bugged me, actually.
You seemed a little peeved, just like a little peeved.
I mean, it was funny to me. The experience was funny in the moment, but actually, I think because I did not know of this association of Dracula with Whitby, the way I'd experienced it at the time is like in my head, Whitby is St. Caedmon, St. Hilda, Synod of Whitby. That's what Whitby is. Never mind the people who live there and have regular lives and don't think about those things at all. But that's what it is to me. And then it's like, oh, by the way, vampires. I'm still processing it. We'll just put it that way. But anyways, so we went to Whitby, and of course, Whitby Abbey, some of the most glorious ruins in all of England.
I mean, they're very picturesque, that's for sure.
Extremely. And you can see why people who are into, that kind of goth, I mean, our kind of goth, Deacon Seraphim, is someone who speaks an ancient Germanic language and is probably very large and wears furs and carries an axe and sacks Rome. You know, if you're going to be truly goth, then you're going to have to sack Rome. So I'm just saying, or at least, you know, significant portions of the Iberian Peninsula.
North Africa. You have a lot of options, actually.
That's true. You know, and you don't even have to go to Hot Topic to make any of those possible. In fact, preferably not. So Whitby, of course, was the home of St. Hilda, the home of St. Caedmon, the place of the Synod of Whitby, all these really amazing things. And it was a great monastery back in the day. So the context of this first story is this monastery, and St. Hilda of Whitby is the abbess of what's called a double monastery. And this exists in a number of places in England, where you've got a community of monks and a community of nuns, and they have usually separate parts of the grounds, right? The monks are one place, the nuns are another place. But then often there's a single abbot or abbess who governs the whole thing. And that's who Hilda is in this case. In fact, actually just earlier this week, we celebrated the feast of Saint Hilda on November 17th. And so she comes into this story, of course. She's not the main event in this particular story, but she's a significant part of it. And Caedmon, the subject of our first tale, he works there. This is still a thing, by the way. So he's not a monk at the beginning of the story. He's not. Right. He works there at the monastery. Monastery is a big place. There's a community. It kind of is the center of economy for the region. And so there's going to be people who work there, you know, laymen and women who live in the area and they work there. This has existed in Christian monasticism in many cases. People who are connected to a monastery but are not actually part of the celibate life of the monastery. So the story as we have it, the one source that I'm aware of, I don't know if there are other sources for his life. Are you aware of any others, Deacon Seraphim?
It's just in Bede. I'll talk a little bit more about the source thing in a minute, but go ahead. Yeah, tell the story.
Okay, so the one source that we have is in the Venerable Bede, his Ecclesiastical History of the English People, and it's in Book 4. And there's a great 19th century translation by J.A. Giles, and he was actually editing an earlier translation, as I recall, when I looked this up. But the great thing about this for our purposes, it is in the public domain. So no one cares if we read this on the internet. You can't get us for that. So I'm going to read it to you. It's not super long, but I think it's important to get the whole story, especially for those who maybe only have heard of it or maybe don't know anything about it at all. So let's begin. There was in this abbess's monastery a certain brother, particularly remarkable for the grace of God, who was wont to make pious and religious verses, so that whatever was interpreted to him out of Scripture, he soon after put the same into poetical expressions of much sweetness and humility in English, which was his native language. By his verses the minds of many were often excited to despise the world and to aspire to heaven. Others after him attempted in the English nation to compose religious poems, but none could ever compare with him, for he did not learn the art of poetry from men, but from God. For which reason he never could compose any trivial or vain poem, but only those which relate to religion suited his religious tongue. For having lived in a secular habit till he was well advanced in years, he had never learned anything of versifying, for which reason, being sometimes at entertainments, when it was agreed for the sake of mirth, that all present should sing in their turns, when he saw the instrument come towards him, he rose up from the table and returned home. And I should mention, this is This is 7th century, right? Is that correct? 7th century?
It'd be the 8th century.
Okay.
Caedmon himself is probably, I want to say he's usually dated to maybe late 7th century. So maybe like 680, right around there.
Okay, and Bede though is 8th century, so
Bede is 8th century. Bede is Bede is end of 7th, beginning of the 8th century. So Bede dies in 735.
Okay.
Caedmon's hymn is probably composed between 660 and 680.
So Bede might have been alive when it's composed, or right around his time.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah. Okay, so they're very close in time in any event. So, continuing on. Having done so at a certain time, and gone out of the house where the entertainment was to the stable, where he had to take care of the horses that night, he there composed himself to rest at the proper time. A person appeared to him in his sleep, and saluting him by his name, said, "Caedmon, sing some song to me." He answered, "I cannot sing, for that was the reason why I left the entertainment and retired to this place, because I could not sing." The other who talked to him replied, "However, you shall sing." "What shall I sing?" rejoined he. "Sing the beginning of created things," said the other. Hereupon he presently began to sing verses to the praise of God, which he had never heard, the purport whereof was thus: "We are now to praise the Maker of the heavenly kingdom, the power of the Creator and his counsel, the deeds of the Father of glory, how he, being the eternal God, became the author of all miracles, who first, as almighty preserver of the human race, created heaven for the sons of men as the roof of the house, and next the earth." This is the sense, but not the words, in order as he sang them in his sleep. For verses, though never so well composed, cannot be literally translated out of one language into another without losing much of their beauty and loftiness. Awaking from his sleep, he remembered all that he had sung in his dream, and soon added much more to the same effect, in verse worthy of the deity. In the morning he came to the steward, his superior, and having acquainted him with the gift he had received, was conducted to the abbess, by whom he was ordered, in the presence of many learned men, to tell his dream, and repeat the verses, that they might all give their judgment what it was, and whence his verse proceeded. They all concluded that heavenly grace had been conferred on him by our Lord. They expounded to him a passage in Holy Writ, either historical or doctrinal, ordering him, if he could, to put the same into verse. Having undertaken it, he went away, and returning the next morning, gave it to them composed in most excellent verse, whereupon the abbess, embracing the grace of God in the man, instructed him to quit the secular habit and take upon him the monastic life, which, being accordingly done, she associated him to the rest of the brethren in her monastery, and ordered that he should be taught the whole series of sacred history. Thus, Caedmon, keeping in mind all he heard, and as it were chewing the cud, converted the same into most harmonious verse, and sweetly repeating the same, made his masters in their turn his hearers. He sang the creation of the world, the origin of man, and all the history of Genesis, and made many verses on the departure of the children of Israel out of Egypt, and their entering into the land of promise, with many other histories from Holy Writ, the incarnation, passion, resurrection of our Lord, and his ascension into heaven, the coming of the Holy Ghost, and the preaching of the apostles, also the terror of future judgment, the horror of the pains of hell, and the delights of heaven, besides many more about the divine benefits and judgments, by which he endeavored to turn away all men from the love of vice, and to excite in them the love of and application to good actions. For he was a very religious man, humbly submissive to regular discipline, but full of zeal against those who behaved themselves otherwise, for which reason he ended his life happily. And then the next part is that ending, right? So that's sort of the main part of the story of St. Caedmon, but then also we have how he died. Now we're going to mostly talk about the first part, but I want to include this, not just for the sake of completeness, but because it's great. So
it's
so
also important. It's just important to note that for Bede, that's actually probably the most important part of the story.
Yeah.
For Bede, if you look at the other hagiography in his history of the English Church, he spends a lot of time kind of dwelling on the way that these different English saints die. So,
Yeah. Okay. So it goes on to say this. For when the time of his departure drew near, he labored for the space of 14 days under a bodily infirmity, which seemed to prepare the way, yet so moderate that he could talk and walk the whole time. In his neighborhood was the house to which those that were sick and like shortly to die were carried. He desired the person that attended him in the evening, as the night came on in which he was to depart this life, to make ready a place there for him to take his rest. This person, wondering why he should desire it, because there was as yet no sign of his dying soon, did what he had ordered. He accordingly went there, and conversing pleasantly in a joyful manner with the rest that were in the house before, when it was past midnight, he asked them whether they had the Eucharist there. They answered, What need of the Eucharist? For you are not likely to die, since you talk so merrily with us, as if you were in perfect health. However, said he, bring me the Eucharist. Having received the same into his hand, he asked whether they were all in charity with him, and without any enmity or rancor. They answered that they were all in perfect charity, and free from anger, and in their turn asked him whether he was in the same mind towards them. He answered, I am in charity, my children, with all the servants of God. Then, strengthening himself with the heavenly viaticum, he prepared for the entrance into another life, and asked how near the time was when the brothers were to be awakened to sing the nocturnal praises of our Lord. They answered, It is not far off. Then he said, Well, let us wait that hour. And signing himself with the sign of the cross, he laid his head on the pillow, and falling into a slumber, ended his life so, in silence. Thus it came to pass that as he had served God with a simple and pure mind and undisturbed devotion, so he now departed to his presence, leaving the world by a quiet death. And that tongue which had composed so many holy words in praise of the Creator uttered its last words whilst he was in the act of signing himself with the cross, and recommending himself into his hands, and by what has been here said, he seems to have had foreknowledge of his death. So that is the tale of St. Caedmon of Whitby. What's your initial... I know you've probably read this 1,000 times. How does it feel to hear it again?
Something I've been thinking about a lot since the pilgrimage is it does seem like there are parts of the Bible that different people are, like different peoples when they convert to Christianity, that they get kind of more jazzed about. It's interesting. It's really interesting to compare this story to the story of Saint Romanos the Melodist, which I would actually like to talk about here in a moment. But
yeah,
to me, one of the things that we talked a little bit about when we were out at Whitby is, is this the oldest surviving Anglo-Saxon poem?
Yes.
I think Dream of the Rood is older. I do, and I think there's good evidence for it. But in any case, they're if it is older, it's probably older by 10 years. Maybe 20. But I mean, this is so early.
This is a good candidate, though. As
it's a good candidate. Yeah, it's a good candidate. Yeah,
and we're gonna, and because we're the kinds of nerds that we are very soon going to read it to you in the original and the original.
Well,
so
we might do one other original, maybe.
Oh,
yeah. Right. So. The Dream of the Rood, just so people know, one of the earliest inscriptions of the Dream of the Rood is on the Ruthwell Cross, which, kind of depending on when you date that to, one of the dates for the Ruthwell Cross is 651, which would be earlier than Caedmon's hymn. But also the Dream of the Rood was probably written by two different people, and maybe one section's older than the other section, and early Anglo-Saxon scholars actually thought that this is not really accepted anymore, but I like it. Early Anglo-Saxon scholars actually thought that maybe Caedmon was the one who had written, because we know there's this great Old English poet in this area of England right around the right time to have had a hand in it. So anyway, I think that we'll see how many things I get done next year, but I want to do some stuff on Dream of the Rood and its connection to Cena from the Syrian, actually. So we'll just see what happens. But I say all that to say this is the most certainly the most characteristically English poem, and so in that sense, and obviously it's not the first English poem. People were writing poems in Old English, or at least memorizing poems, telling poems, singing poems in Old English well before the Christian conversion. But of course, the thing is that Germanic pagans didn't really write a lot of things down.
Yeah, I don't think we have any of them, do we?
No, we don't. No, we don't.
So this is the earliest.
Yeah. So it's
written,
it's,
or one of the earliest written.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where the academic side of me comes in, is like, I always just want to like asterisk things a little bit. It's like, probably, if it's not the earliest, it's the second earliest. And what we mean by that is written, and what we mean, anyway. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
right.
The thing that the Anglo-Saxons are super interested in seems to have been Genesis. And we know this from lots of other sources, not just this. For instance, what does the harper in what does the Schope in Hrothgar's Hall sing about in Beowulf that really ticks off Grendel so much? Well, he sings about the creation and the flood, like the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And of course, if you've watched our episode on Beowulf, you'll know the reason this ticks Grendel off so much is because Grendel is is definitely a descendant of said giants, right? So this is,
right,
recounting the story of the time his people got totally destroyed by God, kind of ticks him off a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but there's also a very famous retelling of Genesis. It's actually probably from an earlier Old Saxon, well, not probably, it is from an earlier Old Saxon exemplar. And then basically we have Genesis A and Genesis B, which you can get bound together in a nice edition from Dumbarton Oaks. And it's really interesting to go read the Anglo-Saxon Genesis A and Genesis B. This will probably be a good episode sometime, because it's so interesting how modern they are. I mean, these are epic poetic retellings. So the kinds of things, not so much like this little hymn which Caedmon does here, which is obviously, it's really excellent from a metrical standpoint. But it's it's a tight little contained hymn, which in Germanic poetry is really highly valued. But the Anglo-Saxons also did a lot of large, basically epic level retellings of much of the Old Testament, including the book of Genesis, of which there are at least 2 surviving examples. It seems like also in the Celtic tradition, you have the same kind of thing going on. And when I say they're not modern, I mean that these are retellings that contain details that a modern person just would not expect to find in a story like Genesis, such as the belief among the Anglo-Saxons that humanity is the destiny of humanity is to fill up the missing seats in the divine council after the devil and his angels fell, which if you want to know more about that, you can see some of Father Andrew's other published works. But that was something that in medieval England people actually took for granted, because it was part of the patrimony, it was part of the way that they'd received holy tradition. And similarly in the Irish in the old Irish tradition, which is of course related to Whitby and everything else, there's something called the Psalter Narain, the Psalter of the Quatrains, which is a psalter, so that is, it is 150 poems. So there's the Psalm, so the Holy Psalter, the Psalms of David. There's 150 of those, asterisk, and so what was very common in the Middle Ages in both East and West is that they would make collections of spiritually profitable poetry, and they would do 150 of them. So it's modeled on the Psalter of David, right? So
yeah.
And this one is a retelling of sacred history. So it starts at Genesis and goes forward. Unfortunately, the whole thing's never been translated into English. And if I have one more lifetime, I would really like to do a good translation of it from Old Irish. So we'll just we'll see if I can find some extra hourglasses. You
already seem to have double the life of the rest of us.
Yes, well, like I said, if I could just find one more time turner, I think I could get it done. But in any case. But what's wonderful about that is that it has, for instance, it has the life of Adam and Eve, like the Syriac version of the story in Ireland in the 5th and 6th century. And it has details like Adam going out to like stand in the river outside of paradise and pray for God, like weeping, all that stuff, except that in the Irish version, he's doing it as a cross vigil. which is like such a great detail. All right. So anyway, it seems like the Anglo-Saxons, when they were given the gift of the Holy Scriptures, the thing that they were the most interested in was this question of beginnings. Where did things begin? How did God make the world? All these different things. And all of that seems to be kind of captured in the story of, let's say, the first great English, or the first English poet whose name we know. The first Christian English poet whose name we know. And this is the story that he's telling, or the song that he's singing. By the way, there's a really good video of an Anglo-Saxon scholar performing this with a harp, probably about the way that it would have been performed. I cannot remember his name right now, but I have it saved, and maybe we can share it somewhere after the episode's over on the Facebook or something for people who want to see that.
Yeah. There's something about this story that has always grabbed me. It's not long, it's not complex, it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
But there's something about it that's just always struck me. And I recall, when I became Orthodox now almost 30 years ago, there was a few people that we had bumped into each other on the internet, and we had this idea of trying to kind of create this sort of literary collective of Orthodox people, and we called ourselves the Society of St. Caedmon. And it was quite incoherent, honestly. But the kind of thing that young converts and young men, are wont to do. But I don't know. There's something so kind of pure and perfect about it. And I've always been so inspired by it that actually one of my sons has Caedmon as a middle name. And the idea of the divine gift of poetry, it's one of these things that is like, there's a pagan version of it, right? This idea of spirits that come and give wisdom and all this kind of stuff. And of course,
sacrificing your eye.
Yes. Within the Greek conception of these things, you've got the muses who give this sort of stuff, and are often invoked at the beginning of poems, including big ones. And yet here it's something different. It's unexpected. Like Caedmon is not looking for this. He's not trying to get it. He's not invoking anyone. God, please help me with this. He just sort of accepts his weakness. And he's probably a bit embarrassed is the image that we get. So he leaves. He doesn't want to make a fuss. So he leaves when everyone else is singing and telling stories and poetry and this kind of thing. And then it comes to him in a dream. It comes to him in a vision. It comes to him as gift. And in a way, it very much echoes the creation of Adam, right? Where man is made out of the dust of the earth. And then it says that God breathes the breath of life into him and he becomes a living soul. And isn't this story the same thing, right? Caedmon is lying down. He's asleep. And indeed, the icons of breathing the breath of life into Adam, Adam is lying down, right? It's this reclined position. And even though Caedmon is not literally coming to life after having not yet been alive or having been dead or something like this, nonetheless, it is breath that he receives, right? Because it's poetry that he receives, and it's it's poetry about the creation of the world, right? So I think that's part of what's going on here. This is a kind of echo of the creation of Adam. This is an echo of the creation of the world, and then it's about the creation of the world, right? Now, I know you want to talk about Saint Romanos. But and maybe let's talk about St. Romanos first before we actually talk about the poem proper.
Yeah. So just,
and what the words actually say.
Let me read the kind of relevant part from his life.
Okay.
That it won't be long, just a couple of paragraphs. So, Romanos loved choir. He was always happy when he was allowed to sing. So the story starts out kind of differently. and but he was basically the bishop, Archbishop of Constantinople, notices Romanos and is kind of impressed with him and says, "Hey, we'd like you to, he says, I'd like you to be one of the official cantors for the great church Hagia Sophia in Constantinople." And the other cantors did not so much care for this. And so when Christmas is drawing near, I always like to tell the story right around Christmas time. Christmas is drawing near, and the great church opens the doors for all the worshipers to come in. It's Christmas Eve, and it's at Vespers, and the time comes for, at that time they would have the singers kind of come down from the, to the middle of the church, and they would sing these long cantakia. Now we have a hymn called the Kontakion, which is like quite short, but
a short little thing. But I wanted to say that probably people have heard, at least when people in Orthodox worship have heard the term katavasia as the title of a kind of hymn. What that word means is it means going down, and so it's literally the song that they're singing as they're. This is my understanding, that they're singing as they're sort of descending into the center of the church, and kind of combining the choirs together.
That's my understanding as well. Not a musicologist, but I have friends who are, and we talk about these things. So, all right. So it's that time, and these other cantors, to kind of put Romanus on the spot and make him look bad, they're like, "Oh, you go down and sing something new," and of course he does what you would do. Well, maybe not you, but what most of us would do if you just like on the spot to go down and like come up with a whole new composition. And that is, he freezes up, and his mouth goes dry, and there are no thoughts in his mind. There's no sound on his lips. His mouth, it's like cotton, and he chokes. And everybody kind of smiles and whispers. You can just hear the whispers going around the Hagia Sophia, and Romanos starts weeping and tries to hide behind the rest of the cantors. And when it's all over, he's weeping, and he's standing in front of the icons by himself. And there's just the vigil lights are burning, and he's standing in front of the icon of the Mother of God, and he says, "O gentle Mother, help me, my mind is empty, my lips are silent. How will I glorify your newly born Son?" So that night he goes home, and he's comforted by his prayers, and he goes to sleep. And in the middle of the night, the Mother of God comes to him, and she's got a scroll, and she says, "Open your lips." And so she places the paper in his mouth and orders him to swallow it. It's like the passage in the Apocalypse, it tastes bad, but it's good for his tummy, and so he obeys and wakes up. And the room is empty, but his heart and his mind are full of joy and of sacred hymns. And so this time, it's Christmas morning. He runs to the cathedral for matins, and it comes time for the katavasia at matins. And again, they sort of push him out there. "Hey, Romanos, the Archbishop thinks you're such hot stuff. Like, go out there and show what you can do." And he steps out and he sings, "Today the Virgin gives birth to the Transcendent One." Yeah. And the earth offers a
yes, which everybody knows very, very well.
Yes, well, I do, because it's especially in the Byzantine version, it's probably my favorite Christmas hymn, and so I listen to it this time of year. But he goes out and he sings that, and of course later on he goes to compose the Akathist hymn as well, is the tradition. And I will just throw this out there as a little, what's the word for like a private theological opinion that doesn't matter?
Theologumenon.
Yeah. I'll just throw this out here. This one was told to me by a wonderful priest of my acquaintance, actually at one of the Lord of Spirits conferences. Not this last one, but the one before that. And he said that it was just his private opinion, but he sort of had this flash of insight that in the Gospel according to St. Luke, when it's after all the stuff having to do with Christ, nativity and child and birth and childhood and all these things, it says, "And Mary kept all of these things and pondered them in her heart." And what this priest told me is that, I don't want to say his name because I want to put him on the spot, but what this priest told me is that what he believed is that that moment is the moment when she opened her heart. When she gave it to him, and then he composed. Eventually, he composed that hymn, but then he composed the Akathist as well. So, anyway, I just think that's really, really beautiful, and I'm just always struck by these two stories, which are so similar, East and West, and both result in so much beauty. I mean, I myself regard poetry really, really highly. I think it's one of the great things, probably one of the great losses of our one of the great sad things about the civilization that we live in today is that so few people know good poetry. And I say good because everybody knows poetry. I mean, stop a random teenage girl on the street and ask her, how many Taylor Swift songs could you sing from memory? Right? Everybody knows some poetry. Everybody knows a hymn to some god. But unfortunately, we've really lost the ability to think poetically in these beautiful ways because the poetry that we have is so trite.
You know, you just lost us our whole Taylor Swift.
All the Swifties,
fandom.
all the Swifties,
all the Swifties who listen to this show.
Oh well. What can I say? Haters gonna hate.
Clearly, you know a little bit of Swiftie lyricism yourself.
I mean, it's hard to avoid these things when you're living out in the world. But anyway, and this is the thing that I love about Caedmon's hymn, to go back to this, is that it's not there's nothing in here that's new or novel.
Right.
And
not at all.
A modern person looking for a hymn about creation is going to be looking for, like, say something that hasn't been said before. But for the Anglo-Saxons, that is not what your job as a poet is. Your job as a poet is to accurately and beautifully communicate something that everybody knows to be true.
Yeah.
And so the thing that's really important for an Anglo-Saxon poet is not so much the theme has to be, first of all, worthy. But once we've settled on a worthy theme, and in the Middle Ages, there's a list of worthy themes to pick from. Once you've settled on a worthy theme, then the thing to do is to set that worthy theme in a form of verse that is tightly constructed, that is well made, and that is fitting for the holiness of the thing that you are describing.
Yeah.
And that is something I think this poem does supremely well. Although, one of the odd things about the poem is that it is, of course, written down to us as Bede's writing the ecclesiastical history in Latin.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the text itself briefly. We've actually had way more to say about this than I imagined we would, because here we are at 3, an hour in already. But so there's a couple of different stories about the text of this. One is that so Bede writes down a Latin version of the poem because his text is in Latin. And he says, this is the sense of it. That's how he says this is a sense of it, but not the words, because he's not writing the Old English, which that was the original. He says it's in English, and then we have a few different Old English versions.
Yeah,
and
five to be exact.
Yes, and. I think, is this correct? All of them are written as marginalia in manuscripts of Bede. Is that correct? At least some of them are, I know.
So it's yes. I mean, the two most important ones are written in the there's two major contemporary manuscripts with manuscript copies, and today they are called the Moor Bede and the St. Petersburg Bede, although a few years ago they were calling the St. Petersburg Bede the Leningrad Bede. But anyway, let's not do that. So this just has to do with where the chain of ownership for these particular manuscripts, which is why they're named this way. And what's important about them is that they are contemporary copies. That is, they were made by people who were basically copying from Bede while Bede was alive.
Gotcha.
And in the marginalia, they include, so for instance, the St. Petersburg Bede contains the sort of marginalia, or kind of in the back. It has a Northumbrian I think it's the earliest Northumbrian recension of Caedmon's hymn, but very importantly, it is in the same handwriting as one of the 4 scribes who's making the copy, which means it says made by someone who's probably the same monastery with Bede, probably knows the same people that he made, and this seems to indicate that when Bede is writing down the hymn, when he's not just like, oh, here's a hymn nobody's ever heard of. He's including the hymn because it is commonly and well known. And when one of the copyists was making a copy for him, he just wrote down the hymn as he knew it.
Yeah.
So these are not translations from the Latin. They're probably of local origin,
right?
Which is what the important thing that I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And we should probably say, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but for those of you who are not the kind of nerd that Deacon Seraphim is and that I aspire to be, marginalia in manuscripts is the stuff written in the margins. It's not the main body of the text. It's sort of notes put into the margins. Which I am not a big marginalia guy in terms of, like, I don't write in my books. I don't like doing that.
I write in all my books. I sometimes write notes to the dead author of said book in the margin. Like,
but in any event,
what is wrong with you? And sometimes
marginalia
let me fix what you said.
Marginalia is a significant part of the inheritance of these texts from the pre-modern world. And like I said, there's kind of 2 stories about the origin of the Old English text. One story is the one that you just mentioned, which is that, either way, there is an Old English original, because that's how the story goes, right? There's what Caedmon said.
Yeah.
Those are the words. And that's what's written down in some marginalia, according to some scholars. Others will say that the Old English that we have is actually a back translation of Bede's Latin. And that may well be true in some cases. Either way, though, Bede's Latin, and I think no Old English version, exactly match up. One is not literally a translation of the other.
Yeah.
So that to me suggests that the marginalia Old English versions are more original, and Bede is kind of writing a summary of sorts, and not. It's kind of a translation, but it's not exactly. Okay, so
by the way, I just want to say one thing, which is that the St. Petersburg Bede has the earliest surviving example of what in medieval paleography and the study of medieval illumination is called a historiated initial. That is an initial letter. You know how they have these big, beautiful initial letters. An initial letter that has a picture of a person inside of it. Okay. And this is just like a random bit of trivia. You can use this to impress girls or to win pub trivia night. Which manuscript has the earliest surviving historiated initial? It's the St. Petersburg Bede. So,
and I'll say, if you do say that to impress a girl, and she is impressed, meaning that you are the kind of person that finds this impressive, and she is the kind of person who finds it impressive,
please write.
You might want to go ahead and buy that ring. I'm just saying.
Yeah, first of all, put a ring on it, to quote another Taylor Swift song. And secondly,
that's not Taylor Swift.
I know. I'm just messing with you guys. Anyway, but A, put a ring on it. B, please write in and tell us how we have helped fix your romantic problems.
That's right. You owe us a goat.
That's right.
If you marry her, you owe us a goat.
That's right.
So
for my goat,
I want to
shredded and in tacos.
There we go. I'm happy. I'm a big fan of stewed goat prepared like Mediterranean style.
Oh yeah.
Or I'm sorry, Caribbean style.
Caribbean style. Yeah.
Okay. So because you got to read this poem in Old English when we were at Whitby, and for some reason I don't know why I didn't do it.
Why didn't you do it?
I know.
We were
I don't know what
there.
I was so minding everyone else. That's going to be my explanation.
Okay. All right. Please.
So I'm going to read it out for everybody in the West Saxon version. So there's several different versions. This is West Saxon version, And then I'm going to read my translation of it that I did a few years ago, and that also actually appears in one of my books. So here's how it goes in the West Saxon Old English. Nu schulen herigian helfen riches werd, meteres mechta and his modje thank, werk wulder vader swak he wundre gewas, etche drichten or onstealde. He arest shelp erden bernum, he oven de hrova halli shippend. Tha midden jerd monkines werd, etche drichten after Theoda, virum foldan, freya almichtig. So here's my translation, in which I will say that I attempted to duplicate as much as possible the alliteration patterns of the original. It's not perfect, as Bede says, you can't make it perfect when you're translating, but this is my version. Now shall we hail heaven kingdom's guardian, the might of the measurer and his mind's counsel. Work of the Father glorious, as wonders for each, he, the forever Lord, founded their beginning. He first made for men's sons heaven for a roof, the holy maker. Then Middle Earth, mankind's guardian, the forever Lord, fashioned after. For men the earth, Master Almighty. So I just want to point out a couple of things here. I think this is the first Old English alliterative poetry I've discussed on the podcast that I recall. And there's a lot of different...
Beowulf. We did a whole...
Oh, excuse me. I don't know why I'm totally blanking on that.
Wow.
You can tell it's been a year. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm ashamed of myself now. I'm ashamed of myself. Forgive me. Anyway,
if you just hold up your 50 card, you can get away with it.
There we go. All right. See, it's age.
Just age.
When
it's eld.
when the age is in, the wit is out.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, to quote someone from much later. Within this poetry, each line is divided into two parts, and then there's usually two significant beats in each part. You get 4 beats, and one of the main beats, whatever syllable that is, the sound that starts that syllable, that in the second part there's an alliteration with that, and bonus points if you do it more than once is kind of how it goes. So, for instance, in my translation, now shall we hail heaven kingdom's guardian. So hail in heaven in my version, and then in the West Saxon one, nu schulen herigian helven riches werd. So it's the exact same alliteration in that case in terms of with an H and the same 2 words, in fact, as just an example. And so one of the things that strikes me about this, actually, and the content of this is pre-modern cosmology, where heaven is a roof, and you've got Middle Earth, where we are now. The underworld is not mentioned in this poem, but the fact that we are on Middle Earth, Middengjerd, means there's something beneath us, right?
Sometimes that Middengjerd is translated like the middle realm, because it kind of indicates, it's more like you've got heaven above, hell. Imagine there is a heaven above and there is a hell below. Look, that's 3 pop culture references today. I think I deserve just a round of applause real quick.
But I have to say, though, this is also foreshadowing for our next tale.
Oh, no. Oh, crap. Yeah, you're totally right. Sorry.
You didn't do that on purpose?
Faith. No, I didn't do that on purpose. I'm so far beyond being able to set things up on purpose at this point. I'm just...
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway. All right. So let's wrap up our discussion of St. Caedmon's tale here. I mean, I love this so much. I just can't. And that's the main thing I have for it. Like, I have some things to say about it, as we've been talking about it, but the main thing I have for this is love. And to stand next to the memorial cross, which is of the Victorian era, that is there in Whitby, and it's high up. As soon as you get to the very top of the 199 steps towards Whitby Abbey, there it is, this great memorial cross in a cemetery that's right there. To stand next to that and to see the stone carving of St. Caedmon with his harp, and to see on the cross, they've got a modern English version of the poem and also an old English version of the poem. And there's also runes. I mean, which is all a little romantic on the part of the Victorians, which, I mean, they gave us that. So, God bless them.
It's just like a little late for Futhork, and Futhork probably not used in that way anyway. But anyway, it's okay.
I'll get it.
It's cool.
It's all right.
Cool.
It looks absolutely totally
really cool.
metal.
The thing is that runes on a stone cross. I mean, there is a strong precedent for that, and that's more, people were not like sitting down and just writing. I mean, they did this very occasionally, but it wasn't really a thing. Runes were not used as like an alphabet the way that you just like use them to write books. Runes are for carving. So a stone cross, it's a fine application. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, to be there, to be talking about Caedmon, to be reading his hymn. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I had never been to Whitby before. Part of a dream come true.
Part of the joy of these things is getting to participate, geographically in things that you've just read about your entire life. And certainly in the case of Bede, pretty much his entire project is one of the major things that set the course that my life has taken. And so to be at those places was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know that we're over time, so I'm not going to try to read the Northumbrian version. I've been over here actually while you were talking, puzzling it out a little bit, because it's boy, if you've just learned West Saxon in school, which is what everybody learns when you learn Old English, you start looking at Northumbrian immersion, and you're like, why? And
those people have weird accents.
How would you say that? There shouldn't be a Y, a C, and two G's in a row. Like there's just like, what are you? We're not. This isn't Welsh. What are we doing here? So, anyway, okay. So I won't try to do that. We'll save that for another time. But let's.
Exactly.
I think that we have. I think we're gonna have a new unprecedented thing, Father Andrew.
Yeah, we're actually, for the first time in here on this anniversary episode, we're gonna take a little break. So we'll take this break and we'll be right back with our next story.
Hi, this is Genevieve, the Director of Development at Ancient Faith Ministries. I want to wish you all a warm and spiritually nourishing Christmas season. As we journey through the sacred Nativity fast towards the birth of Christ, I pray you are filled with hope, awaiting the light of the world. Throughout history, Christians have understood that the light we receive is meant to be shared with others as a gift. St. Nicholas secretly brought hope to families in need, and St. Lucia demonstrated how we can be light bearers in a world of darkness. Here at Ancient Faith, we are honored to edify, evangelize, educate, and engage countless seekers, believers, and those hungry for spiritual nourishment. Every donation, no matter how modest, becomes a light that we pass forward to our listeners. As you prepare for the Nativity, would you consider giving the gift of light to Ancient Faith? Your gift, whether 25, 50, or 100, joins with the offerings of countless others to ensure that Christ's light continues to be lit and shared. Please visit ancientfaith.com and click support on the top menu. Together we are light bearers. Together we prepare the way of the Lord. Blessed Nativity to you and yours, and thank you so much for your generosity.
Well, welcome back. And I hope everybody will take a moment and give a little something, or maybe a lot of something, whatever it is that you have, in gratitude for what we're giving to you right now for free. So, right. Yeah, exactly.
And intend to continue doing for free,
Absolutely.
So if that's your jam, if you enjoy this kind of thing, please support us. Please support us, because
that's what makes it possible.
That's what literally keeps the lights on. In Father Andrew's case, I have solar panels, but
exactly. All right. So from that heartwarming, wonderful tale, now we have something deeply weird, deeply weird. And actually, I should say, by the way, just as a continuous tie-in. Just yesterday, a short video was released on the Orthodox Pilgrim YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Of us in Saint Oran's chapel on Iona, singing a hymn to Saint Oran. So after you listen to this,
Yes.
you can go, continue on in the mood and watch that and hear us do a little bit of singing. So tell us about Saint Oran, Deacon Seraphim. What's all this about?
So we're going to go back, rewind the clock about 100 years, back to the middle of the 6th century. Columba, the dove of heaven, and occasionally also the fox. Although, fortunately, the dove side wins out eventually, thank God for all of us. But he comes to the island of Iona with 12 disciples, 12 apostles, just like Christ did. And if you want to know more of that story, you can come to the Orthodox Arts Festival, where Dr. Martin Shaw and I will be telling saint stories for Meat Fair weekend here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It'll be
great event. I went one time. So fun.
Great event, and also just a nice place to visit in February if you live literally anywhere else. Okay, so.
I disagree.
Sometimes people want a little break from, always winter. But anyway, all right. So, St. Columba comes to the island of Iona with 12 disciples. And one of those disciples is a guy by the name of St. Oran. Now, a little bit of a note about his name. I know that's what you're all here for, is just small philological dickering. I'm really sorry. I feel like I've restrained myself a fair amount today, but yeah. I know that it's sometimes really hard to just not be like, well, actually nobody really.
Hey, well, look, Deacon, your friend and my acquaintance, Dr. Serena Higgins, is in the chat, so we know that there's at least one person who is here for this.
Yeah. So
right?
Just a bit of a note about his name. Oran is also called Odrin or Odran. He's also called Othran. He's also called Otoranus. He's also called Oterus. He's also called Otterin. And he's also called Oran. Now, which one of these is actually correct?
Yes.
Seems like all of them. I had a similar experience where if you watch our videos from the pilgrimage, I keep correcting myself in the videos about the name of St. Mungo's mother. So Thenu, Theneva, Enoch, all these different names. And then I found out later, after recording, of course, that actually those are all correct. She has 7 names, and they're all just mostly variations on each other. And I asked a local, which one of these, and they're like, oh no, those are all fine. It's like, okay, all right, you guys are just making up an entire language just on the fly. That's what's going on, right? So
that's what happens when you eat a lot of haggis.
Yes,
you pretty much feel emboldened to just
haggis. Yeah,
yes,
right. Yeah,
yes.
Haggis and scotch, which apparently are my favorite things. So by tradition, he is a descendant of the of 5th century Irish king. He lives for to be relatively old. Lives for about 40 years in silver mines in County Tipperary, where he builds a church, serves there. Not too far from there, then goes on to found a monastery where he serves as the abbot. And then in 563 ish, he's the one of the 12 companions who accompanies St. Columba to the island of Iona. And this is where things get really weird. So, here's what happens. I'm going to just tell you I'm just going to tell a little bit of a version of the story. We'll do a longer telling in a moment, but just to say, they land on Iona, they get off the boat, they probably take a bathroom break, fill their water skins, and say their prayers. In my head, that's how it goes. And then the first thing they need to do is to build a place to worship. And so they start building a chapel. So they lay all the stones out very nicely to build the chapel, probably on the side of the current monastic foundation, or the ruins of the monastic foundation you can still see there today. And they go to bed, and they get up the next morning, and the whole structure that they were trying to build has fallen apart. And so they started up again and find that, the next day, everything falls apart. And so at this point, Columba is flummoxed. He's not really sure what to do. And so he begins to pray. And as he's praying, it is revealed to him as he's praying that the walls would not stand. The walls of a new structure on Iona would not stand until a living man was buried beneath their foundations. And at this point, Columba's pretty ready to pack things in because he's like, well, we're not doing that, so I guess we're going to move on and find somewhere else. And at this point, Oran, who is kind of an older man at this time, but at this point, Oran volunteers himself. And Columba says, are you really, really sure? Are you really sure you want to do this? And he says, yes, this is what I want to do. And the idea is that he's going to basically become a martyr. He's going to give his life, his bones, to the earth of Iona to kind of sanctify it. And so he's buried. And 3 days after, Columba's feeling really bad. Like everything's working. The chapel's not falling apart anymore. But Columba is feeling really bad about what happened. And so he says, let's just open the grave and take a look at him one more time. And when he does this, one of three things happen. The first is that he says, is that when they open the grave, Oran's eyes open. And he says, there is no hell as you suppose, nor heaven in the way that people talk about. And Columba, quite alarmed at this heresy, cries out very famously, earth, earth on Oran's eyes, lest he further blab. And they carry his body up again. In some stories, they move his body to consecrated ground, and that solves the problem. There's another variant of the story in the Hebrides, that Oran was promised that because he was offering his life in this way, that his soul would be safe in heaven. And so sometime after the burial, Columba wanted to see Oran once more. Again, feels bad about what's happened, has the pit opened under the chapel. And when Oran wakes up and he sees the world, and he tries to start climbing out of his grave. And Columba has the pit covered with earth in this version of the story to save the Oran's soul from the world and from the sin that is in the world. So it's a way of saving him. There's another version in which Columba is wondering what's going on with Oran and is praying about it. Instead of having the pit opened, he's praying about it, and what he sees is devils and angels fighting over Oran's soul before it ascends to heaven. Which probably, we'll talk about this in a moment, but symbolically, that is probably encapsulate the other two stories within it. That, you know, even after Oran's death, there is this. By the way, it's a universal Christian belief that when you die, you don't go immediately to heaven. There is some kind of a tug of war that happens over your soul, and there's a symbolic 40-day period for this, and that's why in the Orthodox Church still today we really redouble our prayers for people during that time after they've reposed. So, what's going on with all of this, Father Andrew? What's up with these weird stories?
It is weird, and it's disturbing, and I think if you take it literally, like it seems like a Christian, compromise with paganism.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's
this idea that, it's not just an idea. It is known that in many pagan contexts, that when a building was being built, that there would be basically a sort of a human sacrifice, but not really a human sacrifice, because the person is not then put on an altar and eaten and so forth. But often a slave would have his throat cut, and they throw him down in there, and he would be underneath the foundations of the
or sometimes be buried alive.
Yes,
so
that's the thing too.
This is in Indo-European cultures. This is called a foundation sacrifice. Yeah, and I don't know if there's examples of it in non-Indo-European cultures because I don't know as much about them. But it's pretty common in old pagan Europe. There's there's another example that's actually probably even later than this in the Serbian national epic, by the way, which we will definitely cover on this podcast at some point.
We've had someone actually offer to us
because it is totally rad.
who's plugged into all the Serbian
Yes.
stuff. So
Yeah, but the problem is like to do the Serbian thing, we're gonna have to get like Rocky in here, and stuff is gonna happen. We just like that's gonna be like a very special episode. Don't let your kids watch this one. So anyway, but I've been up.
never
since
make
5
never
o'clock,
make a
kids.
Serb angry. Basic rule for life. Never make a Serb angry.
But also just like be a little careful when they're happy as well. And I mean this in a nice way. I have a lot of Serbian friends, but like if a Serbian walks up to you at a Christmas party and says, "I made this in my bathtub," just be a little careful. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Be a little careful. I speak of what I know. All right, but this idea of the foundation sacrifice is this idea that when you're building something, that you're actually taking it from the earth. You're taking it from the gods of the place. You're taking it from the gods of the like whatever. Like, but when you build something, you're kind of like invading a space.
Yeah, so you need
And
to give back.
Yeah, and so the idea is like you have to propitiate the principalities of that place, the titular spirits. You have to propitiate them a little bit with some kind of an offering. Now, that's very common in pagan Europe. The question is like, what is going on in this story? Because the idea that there was a guy named Saint Oran who was one of the 12 companions of Columba, and who was on the island of Iona in the 6th century, none of that is actually in question, even though the first written evidence of the story comes much later. Like the actual foundation of the chapel there in Iona is quite ancient. So what's up with that?
Yeah. I think there's a bunch of things that one could say about this. Number one, probably the first thing that I would say to someone if they read the story and they're kind of freaked out by it, is to say, taking this absolutely literally is maybe not the best direction to go. At least it's not the best place to begin. The place that I would begin, and actually this is not in the notes, but this just occurred to me, is thinking about Golgotha.
Mm-hmm.
So traditionally Golgotha, right? It's called the place of the skull. Why is it called the place of the skull? Well, the Bible doesn't tell us why it's called the place of the skull, the place where Jesus is crucified. Just simply mentions that it has this name. But the reason that it has this name is because the tradition is that is the very place on which Adam is buried.
By the way, it's not because it's a hill that really looks like a skull. That location, Gordon's Calvary was come up with much later ad hoc by a totally interesting but very weird dude who, among other things, and by the way, like Charlton Heston made a biopic out of him, so like it's a really good movie that you should go watch called Khartoum. But anyway, one of the things that he did in his many travels is he got to the Middle East and he was like, oh no, the Orthodox and Catholics have already claimed all the holy sites. Luckily, I have had a mystical vision that shows me alternate holy sites for evangelicals. So anyway, the Garden Tomb, Gordon's Calvary, like all that really happened. That's not the spot. But anyway, sorry, Father Andrew.
I was going to say, when you started, the first thought that I had was not that you were going to say that.
Charlton
I
Heston?
thought you were... No, none of that.
Oh.
I thought that you were going to make a He-Man reference with Castle Grayskull.
No, I was not going to do
I have the
that.
Power!
I had the kind of childhood where it's a lot more Charlton Heston and a lot less He-Man. So that's...
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember when I was a kid that a lot of people said that He-Man was a kind of satanic,
corrupting
devilish...
the Utes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Golgotha, let's go back to that.
Yeah, so Golgotha, the place of the skull. So it's the tradition is that it is the place where Adam is buried. And in Orthodox iconography, I should just say in Christian iconography generally, a lot of depictions of the crucifixion, you will see a skull and crossbones underneath the foot of the cross. And there's a lot going on there, right? So this is the place where the original human death is present because of Adam, but also it's the place where now the new Adam is dying, but also it's the place where the new Adam, that is to say Jesus Christ, is defeating death. And so all of that is going on at the same time in the iconography.
Right.
And but then also, and this is probably the more obvious thing to say maybe, but I think that what I'm about to say participates in what I just said, there is also the tradition of that chapels and churches and altars are built on or sometimes including the relics of saints. And, so again, it is a place of burial, a place of the presence of death, a place of bones. And it might be that the saint is buried in the ground underneath the altar or behind the altar or in a crypt beneath the altar. I mean, that's another way of kind of accomplishing the same thing and still having access to the relics so you can go venerate them more easily. But also that relics are traditionally put inside the altar proper, whether it can be like in a slab that is the top of the altar, or if the altar is made out of wood, there's sometimes a kind of like a compartment, a box, with a hidden door. And then also there is the tradition in some cases that the 4 pillars of the altar, that the relics are dropped down into holes inside those 4 pillars.
Yeah,
that's another way
the altar at my church
of doing it. All of those are possibilities. And it's this weird thing, the idea that prayer and life and beauty and worship should be on top of bones, should be on top of the dead. And I think that, so much in paganism is really a demonic parody of what is good.
So I think this is definitely the right track to go down. And what I would say is that I think the story really happened. I mean, I think it really happened. Okay. And I think that it is I think that it is an extreme example. And of course, like this is like Iona is the edge of the world. It's still the edge of the world. It is. Go there, people. It takes a relatively like it takes like you have to really want to go there. Now it's way easier now than it used to be, but it's still like a harder place to get to. Okay. And so on the edge, when you get out to the edges, get out to the fringes of things, the fringe of civilization, the fringe of the world, the edge of the world, right? Well, what's at the edge of the world? Well, there's dragons. What does that mean? It means that one of the things it means is that there's more, everything just becomes more attenuated, it becomes more extreme. And so, for instance, the Christian practice, when Tertullian, for instance, when he says the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, go read what the context where he said that. He did not mean that in a general nice way. Oh, every time somebody gets martyred, somebody converts to Jesus. Like, obviously that was true for the most part. But what he's actually talking about is on the places where you kill people, churches pop up.
Right.
And I seriously do believe that the act of burying a Christian is an act of invasion. It is a harrowing of Hades. You are invading the underworld, which is why Christians we're not supposed to cremate our dead. We don't do sky burials for our dead. We bury our dead in the earth, right? One of the many reasons. I know we keep talking about funeral stuff on the Great Tales podcast, but seriously, like it's quite important. All right, so
a lot of life is about death, people.
A lot of life is about that's one of the markers of civilization. The four great sins that a civilization can commit that will cause them to be destroyed. One of them is not caring for the dead properly. But anyway, different situation.
One thing I want to interject is that there is a really significant detail in this story as compared to the pagan foundation sacrifices.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, there's several, but the one that I want to point at is it's voluntary.
Right.
Oran, to quote the Lord, lays down his own life, right? He, no man takes it from me. I lay my life down of my own accord. And there are a lot of stories of saints that become aware that their moment has come and they simply lie down and die. I mean, and it seems like with St. Caedmon, it seems to be that's kind of the story. Everyone thinks he's doing well. Actually, I wanted to mention, by the way, it was interesting to me, especially in the second part of that story. So in the first part, Caedmon is very much this kind of humble, he's humble the whole way through, but he's got this secondary lesser obedient role. And then at the end, it's, come to me, my children. He's regarded as
he's obviously kind of a leader in the community. Yeah.
He's a holy elder.
Because if you have a really good poet like that guy, that's the guy that you spend time around. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And perhaps, and I actually don't know anything about Saint Oran except this story. But as you said, he seems to have been older at this point, and so another way of, even though it's not in the text that you mentioned, another way of also reading this is that Oran, he knew that it was his time, and so he steps down and goes. I think, but then you get these weird other things about digging him up. That's kind of the part that's like, it's a little uncomfortable, or a lot uncomfortable.
That stuff to me. So I do think that it is. This is part of the invasion, like the harrowing of Hades. This is part of the invasion motif. But then, like, what to do with that uncomfortable stuff? I think part of that is just because the story itself is inherently ambiguous. Nobody is saying this is a normative practice. You should do this whenever you need to build a new church. Like, find an old person in your community and bury them alive. Like, nobody's is obviously like, don't do this. This is not an okay thing to do.
Right.
And because of that, it has this kind of ambiguous quality to it. But that quality is resolved by two things. One is I think the version of the story. I think some of these other kind of more fantastical ones are. They may be later, maybe not, but in any case, the version of the story where Columba sees the angels and the demons fighting over Oran's soul, and then the other thing is if you just go there, because the evidence of like whether or not it worked is Iona a holy place, and the thing is, like, when you go there, like, you can just feel the saints like you can reach out and touch them like immediately. So to me, I to be totally honest, so I'm about to read something which is a retelling of the story which I've been writing for probably 4 or 5 years, and I was stuck at the ending, could not resolve it until literally on the ferry over to Oban, the ferry over to Mull, and that's when it kind of all resolved for me, and it was just like, as we were getting close to Iona, and then once I was there, I was really kind of hesitating. I was talking to Father Jacob about the story, and he said, "No, I think you're right. You should tell that here." And so,
just to mention, actually, I think the geography is important here. So, if you look at a map of Scotland, and you look at the western coast, there's a series of islands off the western coast that are called the Hebrides, and one of the big ones, is called Mull. And so Mull, you get to Mull by taking a ferry from the town of Oban, which is right on the coast. And that ferry takes about an hour, and then you get on a bus from there, and it's another hour ride across the southern part of Mull on what's called the Ross of Mull, which is this sort of branch that sticks out kind of on its own. And then at the very end of the Ross of Mull is a little village called Finnefort, and then you get another ferry, a 10-minute ferry, to Iona. And so it's the edge of the edge of the edge of the edge.
Yeah.
And so when you say that it came to you on the ferry from Oban to Mull, we're nearing the end of our day-long journey.
To Iona, you get to the end of the world, and then you just go a little bit further, and that's Iona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
I remember you read this while we were there. I think you read this next to St. Oran's Chapel.
Yes, right out.
And so read it for us now. I love this, actually, the parts that I heard when we were there.
All right. Iona's rock was black and bare, and Iona's waters cold. Iona's earth was hungry, and all its gods were old. Columba came in a leaking boat to Iona's craggy shores, and 12 monks followed the Irish saint, as 12 men followed our Lord. Iona's gods were ancient gods, and born of blood and stone, and they named the price of Iona's earth, one man's breath and bone. Columba came to Iona's shore to plant the cross of Christ, but never would a building stand for more than a single night. Each day the monks would rise for work to see the work undone. Each day they'd lay the bricks anew under the cheerless sun. So Columba stood like a carven cross upon the western shore, while the surf and the sea foam battered him, and asked mercy of our Lord. The answer came mid the wind and rain in a voice as cold as stone. No angel answered Callum there. Iona's gods were old. We are old and hateful, hungry things. You haven't paid the toll. Our ancient tribute we demand, one man's breath and bone. Now tell by Christ what be your names, said Columba to the wind. I know of Lug and the ravens three and the dark-haired Morrigan. All these and more their tribute paid, and on their knees have bowed to the God who was born in Bethlehem, to the man that Pilate crowned. We know not Lug or Morrigan or Pilate of the crown. Iona's gods are ancient gods, and we have never bowed. Nor ask we worship of your kind, but only ask our due. Build your temple to your God, we will not hinder you. 13 men came to our shore, now one of them we claim. Bury him in the hungry earth, to the gods that no men name. Columba stood like a carven cross upon the eastern shore, while the surf and the sea foam battered him, and asked mercy of our Lord. Then Oran spoke, an ancient monk, an abbot of ancient Meath. I do not fear the gods of old, so here you'll bury me. 80 years and more have I in Erin's meadows green preached the gospel of the Lord, and heard the church bell ring. My bones are old, my sight is dim, I am too weak to dig, so bury me beneath the strand, so Iona's church may live. Long ago in pagan times our fathers buried slaves under the foundation stones of Cork and green Galway. So I, who am the slave of Christ, should not despise the earth, or to be buried in the strand, so you may build Christ's church. The martyrs' bones are mighty seeds, and men in later days will gather here from many lands to sing the Maker's praise. Then Callum wept and prayed and wept, and tried to change his mind, but Oran's face was set like flint, beneath the earth to lie. Columba gave the order then to dig the abbot's grave. The monks, they wept at the command, but they dug it all the same. This new and final bed you've dug, said Oran, and lay down, will be my pyre of martyrdom, that I might win a crown. Then Callum wept and prayed and wept, and issued the command, and Oran, he went down alive beneath Iona's strand. Iona's rock was black and bare, and Iona's waters cold, but Iona's earth was sated by Oran's breath and bone. Columba stood like a carven cross upon the western shore, while the surf and the sea foam battered him, and asked mercy of our Lord. An answer came mid the wind and the rain, in voices from the stones. There is no heaven above, O man, nor is there hell below. An answer came mid the wind and the rain from the monks who laid the stones. Oran wakes, make more earth, make haste, oh hear his dreadful groans. An answer came mid the wind and the rain, and opened Callum's eyes. He saw the angels battling o'er Iona's slate-grey skies. The answer came mid the wind and rain, as Callum stood and prayed. On the bones alone of a Christian man can the stones of a church be laid. Oran has not fed the gods who hungered here for man. They fled away beyond the isles at the coming of Oran. But will the angels triumph? Will the devil take his soul? The doom that waits for Oran, only the Lord God knows. So Columba stood like a carven cross upon the eastern shore, while the surf and the sea foam battered him, and asked mercy of our Lord. Iona's rock was black and bare, and Iona's waters cold. Iona's church was built that day upon St. Oran's bones.
I have to say, I love it. 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 So, good job, my friend.
Well, that means a lot to me. I honestly I've been stuck on this poem for several years. It just kind of lives rent-free in my head most of the time, and I was really hesitant about even reading it while we were there. But thank God. There is something I think kind of wonderful about something like that you're just like stuck on, and then you get to the place and it's like, oh, I know how this fits now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, shall we have a look at the chat and see what our friends have been saying?
Oh boy. All right. Yes. Okay.
Scrolling back, a number of lovely congratulations on our first anniversary. Thank you very much, everybody.
Some discussion about skillet. Is it rock? Is it metal? Is it new metal with umlaut over it? Winged Hussars is amazing.
Heavy metal umlaut.
Okay. Lots of good examples of Christian metal from Sam Cooke. So I don't know if you're into that sort of thing. Apparently there's a metal song called Dogmas of Chalcedon, which is okay. All right. Okay. All right. So
I can't believe it.
Stephen Lynn offers to concisely explain all the metal micro genres in a way that you would easily understand. So
I'm always in favor of.
Sounds like a podcast idea, Stephen. Get on. There are not actually enough podcasts. I don't know if you know this. So yes,
it's true.
Wherever there's an empty microphone, it is searching for a man in his late 20s, early 30s who is willing to talk into it. So
it's true. We actually have our first, as far as I know, the first, so I don't know how it's pronounced, but it looks like Di Laura E. Hello from France. First time catching you live. And she's catching up on double speed. And also says she's a metalhead.
Is that like the Laura E? Is that the idea? Is that German? What's
D Laura? I don't know. I hope it's not Die Laura E, but that's what it looks like to me.
Be nice to Laura.
But we don't know you, Laura, but welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Sam asks, when we mentioned about Vikings, if we were going to Minneapolis for St. Alexis Toft. Well, yes, of course they do love their Vikings up there in Minnesota.
So I've heard.
But actually, St. Alexis is right here in Pennsylvania. I can drive an hour and a half.
That's right.
And
That's
be at his bones.
That's right.
So, we're God willing, we're going to Scandinavia. God willing, we're going to. The plan is Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and maybe even a little bit of northern Germany. We'll just have to see.
Ugh, Denmark. I don't know, man. Okay.
Can you handle it? Can you handle if we go and stand in the place that Heorot may have been?
No, that's fine. It's just the Danish language wigs me out a little bit, but it's okay. Well, I'll get over it. I've
heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
So, yes. So God willing, we'll do that and bring you back some fascinating tales of Viking saints. And do a little Viking of our own. Towards the end, we got a lovely comment from Dr. Higgins, who says that your poem was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much for that, Dr. Higgins. We appreciate it. So, and she also says the girls can have podcasts too. Actually, that is absolutely true. And one thing I've been trying to work on, but it's very difficult. I don't know why it's so difficult, is we want some more female podcasters for Ancient Faith Radio. We absolutely do. And actually, I should mention, since I'm mentioning this, that we have selected a new host for one of our flagship shows, which is Ancient Faith Presents. It's I'm trying to make sure I get her last name correct, but Melanie, who is our book publicist, is now also the hostess of Ancient Faith Presents. And so Melanie Lorenzo. Yes, I was thinking of her maiden name in my head because she just got married just within the last couple of years, and so Melanie's doing a great job with that podcast. Everybody, and everybody should go check it out. It's interviews.
The microphone chooses the podcaster, Harry. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Father knows I've actually gotten a little obsessed with microphones as of recent.
Oh, indeed, indeed. Especially because
I send Father Andrew like new microphone lore like every day now.
I know, it's so funny, and we've got new cameras as part of what it is.
We do. They're so cool. They're so cool.
Wonderful toys.
Seriously though, look at this thing. I don't get any money. I should get money from Osmo for. Like, we filmed the entire Scotland documentary on 2 of these. This thing does like 4K.
It's amazing.
HD, like cinematic widescreen. Anyway,
again, I mean, I know we've advertised it 20 times in this episode, but go check out the Orthodox.
Yeah, go check out the Orthodox Pilgrim. I mean, there's going to be a lot of fun things. There's going to be a lot of fun things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for chiming in, everybody, and. I feel like we had to do this episode because these tales are just so much on our hearts right now. But also, I think that it's a beautiful coming together of our first anniversary, and then also doing some saints' lives, and then also having these wonderful stories from our pilgrimage to bring you. I think it's been a great year of podcasting. It's gone by so quickly. I'm so grateful that we get to do this show. I really like it. And
I am as well. And hey, if you like this sort of thing, I know we already did that plug, but I know we already did that. But no, I'm really grateful to do it too. Like, I mean, this is just literally every episode is one of my favorite things. As my friends know, I have a lot of favorite things. Very often somebody will mention a story. I'm like, oh, it's my favorite story. It's like, well, they can't all be. Sure they can though. But this is like getting to talk about my favorite things with my friend, and like what's better than that? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this anniversary episode of the Great Tales podcast, as well as our very first foray into saints' lives. Not going to be our last. If you've experienced the joy of divinely inspired song, or even if you felt driven down to your grave, please like, subscribe, share, and review. You can find us on YouTube primarily, but also Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other places where podcasts wangle their webs out into the world.
I don't care for that. I don't know what that means. If you're watching this here on YouTube, please kindly do the needful, which is my least favorite phrase that anybody's ever used for anything. It's the thing in the corporate world now. Whenever you say, like do something that's required, like a necessary part of a process, and you say, "Would you kindly do the needful?" I'm like, "No, I will not. I will not." Hate it so much. Anyway, if you would kindly do the needful, click the little bell so that you make sure you subscribe, click the bell so that you get notified every time we release a new episode. Those of us out here in YouTube land are always desperately trying to figure out the algorithm. So help us continue in our delusion that we know how this works.
Until next time, fare you well, and may the forever Lord and guardian of mankind watch over you in this Middle Earth.
This has been a listener and viewer supported presentation of Ancient Faith